Okay, so what we have today, this is a cutaway of an MS-261 chainsaw. It's a very popular model, and we would call this a professional saw, and it's in the 50cc range. And I just want to talk a little bit about some comparisons between a two-stroke engine, which is what you will find most in handheld power equipment, versus maybe a four-stroke engine that you would find in like a typical lawnmower or even in an automobile. Of course, being that this is considered or called a two-stroke, the main difference is we have to mix our gas and oil together. And all STIHL products was recommended at a 50-to-1 mix ratio. So this would be our fuel tank here. And so what we would use is a good quality mix oil designed for an air-cooled two-stroke engine. And at a ratio of 50-to-1 means that for 1 gallon of gasoline, you would put 2.6 ounces of the STIHL mix oil with that. And we always want to make sure the customer realizes we need to shake it up and always use fresh gasoline. It's recommended that it not to be stored more than about 30 days. Now, as we start taking a closer look internally, and again, being a cutaway, we're actually able to see some of the moving parts here. So as I pull this starter rope, we can see this is called a flywheel, and it serves two purposes for this engine. This would be our ignition system. So we use the flywheel to help generate spark. It's got a magnet on it that interacts with our module, and so this is how we produce spark for the engine. But the flywheel is also there to help direct airflow across the engine. It's an air-cooled engine. It's not water-cooled like an automobile. Of course, we don't need that excess weight. So all the cooling air is forced by this fan wheel or flywheel over the cylinder to help keep it cool. Now, if I rotate the product around, we can get a closer look internally to the engine. So as I pull the starter rope, you can actually see this item is known as the piston. We can see the piston moving up and down in the engine. So the two pieces of metal that are on the top are known as piston rings. And so those rings expand out against the cylinder walls, and they help build compression. So in order for this engine to run, we have to be able to compress the fuel charge, air and fuel mix, and ignite it on top of the piston. So a little different in talking about an engine such as a car, in that a two-stroke, we put our oil in the fuel, and as the engine starts, our actual mix enters the bottom of the crankcase and provides lubricant. Provides lubrication for the bottom end, our crankshaft and bearings. So to kind of walk you through the steps, and I'll go through as the piston starts moving upward in the cylinder, we create an area of low pressure in the crankcase. And once the piston opens up the intake port, your air-fuel mix is exposed to the crankshaft and the crankcase. Now, while that's happening, we're compressing a charge of fuel upstairs, and on top of the piston, and just before top dead center, we have spark. We have it create an explosion which drives the piston downward in the engine. So as the piston is traveling down, that charge that we recently introduced downstairs is now pushed up through transfer ports to be exposed at this point to the top of the piston. So as we're coming back up, we compress, we fire, we have our power stroke, and we drive the piston back down. Now as the piston is traveling down, at this point we open the exhaust port. So now our exhaust gases can escape out of the muffler. And again, we compress the bottom end, push the fuel back up top, and we start the process over. So that's why it's known as a two-stroke engine. Now, we do everything that we can to help improve our environment, meaning the new technologies are set up so that we have a very emission-friendly engine. And we do that several ways, but most important is we're reducing the amount of what we call scavenge loss, and that's the unburned gasoline actually being able to enter into the atmosphere. So a couple of let's talk about some safety features that are built into the unit. Of course, we know using a power tool, if it's not used properly, we can have some accidents, which of course could lead to injuries. So at STIHL, we put as many safety features as we can, and of course promote proper protective equipment, personal protective equipment when operating. So let's focus on what is known as a chain brake. When I'm operating this chainsaw, I should always have a good grip with both hands. You notice this hand guard that's mounted up front. It actually has a weight that is positioned in the top, and it is connected to a brake band that completely encircles the sprocket or the clutch. So if I'm operating the unit and I experience what is known as kickback, this unit is pushed back toward the operator, my left wrist activates a brake band which encircles the sprocket and locks the chain down. Now, not only is that feature manually activated, you remember I mentioned that there's a lead weight in the top. It also works off inertia. So the momentum of this saw kicking back can trip that brake automatically as well. Now, some of the products, such as the one that I'm holding here, has an additional chain brake system built into it, meaning anytime I let go of the handle, the chain brake is engaged as well. So we have engagement here, we have it manually here, and we have it working off inertia. So we call this our Quick Stop Super. Okay? So that's just a quick rundown on some of the features. There's many more to discuss, but I think gives you a pretty good idea of the operation of a two-stroke engine.